The emergency beacon cut through the darkness of space like a scream. Commander Zethkar of the Valerian research vessel, Luminous Dawn, watched the crimson warning lights flash across his bridge displays, each pulse marking another second closer to disaster. "Status report," he commanded, his four arms working frantically across the control panels. The ship groaned around them, hull plates buckling under the relentless assault from the Korthak war fleet that had ambushed them near the edge of the nebular colonies. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, reported Science Officer Eula, her voice tight with controlled panic. "Life support failing in sections 4 and 9. We have maybe 6 hours before total system failure." Zethkar's mandibles clicked together in frustration. The Luminous Dawn was a research vessel, not a warship. They had been conducting peaceful mineral surveys when the Korthak raiders dropped out of hyperspace like hungry predators. The Korthak Dominion had been expanding aggressively for months, consuming smaller civilizations and enslaving entire populations. "Communications, send out a general distress signal," Zethkar ordered. "Maximum range, all frequencies." "Sir, the nearest Valerian patrol is 3 days away," Communications Officer Rith pointed out. "The Galactic Council forces are even further. We don't have that much time." "Then we pray someone closer receives our call," Zethkar replied grimly. The ship shuddered again as another plasma barrage struck their failing shields. Through the viewports, he could see the massive Korthak dreadnoughts moving in for the kill. Their ships were dark, angular things that looked like metal insects, bristling with weapons designed for one purpose: destruction. "Sir," Eula called out, her voice carrying a note of confusion. "I'm detecting something strange on the long-range sensors, multiple contacts approaching our position at incredible speed." "Korthak reinforcements?" Zethkar asked, his heart sinking. "Negative, sir. These signatures are different. Unknown configuration. They're moving faster than anything in our databases." On the main display, a dozen new contacts appeared, racing toward their position at speeds that defied conventional physics. The ships were sleek, predatory-looking vessels that seemed to cut through space itself. "Incoming transmission," Rith announced. It's from one of the unknown vessels." "Put it through," Zethkar ordered. The face that appeared on their screen was unlike anything they had seen before. Bipedal, with pale skin and strange, forward-facing eyes that seemed to burn with intelligence and determination. The creature spoke in a voice that was surprisingly calm despite the battle raging around them. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Colonial Defense Force. We received your distress signal. Identify yourselves and your situation." Zethkar's mandibles dropped open. Terrans. He had heard whispers of these beings in the furthest reaches of space. They came from a world called Earth, a planet so hostile that most civilized species considered it uninhabitable. The stories said that nothing could survive there except the most dangerous predators, and that the Terrans themselves were the apex species of that nightmare world. "I am Commander Zethkar of the Valerian research vessel, Luminous Dawn," he managed to reply. "We are under attack by Korthak raiders. Our ship is badly damaged, and we have limited time before total system failure." The human's expression hardened, and Zethkar felt a chill run down his spine. There was something predatory in those forward-facing eyes, something that spoke of a species that had clawed its way to the top of a food chain that most beings couldn't even imagine. "Understood, Commander. Stand by for immediate assistance. Do not repeat. Do not attempt to engage the hostiles. We'll handle this." The transmission cut off, and Zethkar found himself staring at the tactical display in amazement. The human ships had closed the distance in mere minutes, moving with a grace and speed that seemed impossible for vessels of their size. "Sir," Eula whispered, her voice filled with awe and terror, "what have we done?" Before Zethkar could respond, the space around their ship erupted in light and fury. The human vessels opened fire with weapons that seemed to tear reality itself apart. Beams of pure energy lanced through the darkness, striking the Korthak ships with surgical precision. The raiders, who had been so confident in their superiority just moments before, suddenly found themselves facing something they had never encountered. The lead Korthak dreadnought, a massive vessel that dwarfed even the largest Galactic Council ships, took a direct hit from one of the human weapons. The beam cut through its shields like they were made of paper, then sliced cleanly through the hull from bow to stern. The ship split in half, secondary explosions rippling along its length as atmosphere vented into space. "By the Ancient Ones," Rith breathed. "They just destroyed a dreadnought with a single shot." The remaining Korthak ships tried to return fire, but the humans moved like living shadows, darting between the plasma bursts with impossible agility. Their ships seemed to dance through space, weapons firing with deadly accuracy while never remaining in one place long enough for the raiders to lock onto them. Another Korthak vessel exploded, then another. The raiders who had seemed so terrifying just minutes before were being systematically dismantled by opponents who fought like they had been born in the depths of space itself. "Open a channel to the human admiral," Zethkar ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. Admiral Chen's face reappeared on their screen. She looked completely calm, as if destroying an entire Korthak war fleet was merely a routine exercise. Behind her, Zethkar could see other humans working at their stations with professional efficiency, their movements precise and coordinated. "The immediate threat has been neutralized, Commander," she reported. "We're dispatching repair teams to assist with your ship. Medical teams are also standing by if you have casualties." "Admiral," Zethkar said, struggling to find the right words. We are grateful for your assistance. But I must ask, what brings human ships to this remote sector?" Chen's expression became more serious. "We've been tracking Korthak expansion into this region for several weeks. Intelligence suggested they were planning major raids on civilian populations. We were already moving to intercept when we picked up your distress call." "You were hunting the Korthak?" Eula asked, her voice filled with disbelief. A slight smile crossed the Admiral's features, and Zethkar felt that predatory chill again. "The Korthak have made a serious mistake. They attacked a human research station 2 weeks ago. Killed every man, woman, and child they found there, 300 innocent people. The temperature on the bridge seemed to drop several degrees. Zethkar could see the cold fury in the human's eyes, carefully controlled but burning like a star. "What they don't understand," Chen continued, "is that humans don't forget. We don't forgive. And we never ever leave our dead unavenged." This was just the beginning. Through the viewports, Zethkar could see the human ships moving with deadly purpose, collecting data from the destroyed Korthak vessels, scanning for survivors and intelligence. They worked with the methodical efficiency of apex predators who had found a new hunting ground. "Admiral," he said carefully, "the Galactic Council maintains strict protocols about military action in neutral space. The Korthak will demand—" "The Korthak," Chen interrupted, her voice carrying an edge that made Zethkar's exoskeleton quiver, "are about to learn what happens when you threaten human civilians. The Galactic Council can file all the protests they want after we're finished." A new contact appeared on the tactical display, massive beyond comprehension. It was a human ship. But unlike the sleek destroyers that had just decimated the Korthak fleet, this vessel was enormous, its hull bristling with weapons that hurt to look at directly. "Sir," Eula reported, her voice barely a whisper. "That ship. It's reading as 12 kilometers long. The energy signatures they're off our scale." Chen glanced at something off-screen, then looked back at them. "That would be the Retribution, our newest dreadnought. She's carrying a full battle group. Admiral Harrison sends his regards." The massive ship settled into position near their damaged vessel, its presence both reassuring and terrifying. Smaller craft began launching from its bays, repair ships and medical vessels moving toward the luminous dawn with practiced precision. "Commander," Chen said, her tone becoming more formal, "we'll have your ship operational within the hour. I strongly suggest you return to Valerian space and inform your government about what you've witnessed here today." "What are you planning to do?" Zethkar asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. The Admiral's smile returned, cold and predatory. "We're going to follow the Korthak back to their territory. We're going to find every world they've conquered, every population they've enslaved, and we're going to liberate them. All of them. But the Korthak dominion spans dozens of systems," Eula protested. "They have hundreds of ships, millions of soldiers." Chen's expression didn't change. "So did the Vagan Empire when they made the mistake of attacking Earth 60 years ago. So did the Centauri hegemony when they tried to enslave our colonies. Ask them how that worked out for them." Zethkar felt a chill of understanding wash over him. He had heard fragments of those stories, whispered tales that most civilized species dismissed as impossible. Entire interstellar empires that had simply vanished, their territories found empty, except for automated messages warning others to stay away. "You've done this before," he said, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. "Humanity has a very simple philosophy, Commander," Chen explained. "We protect our own, we honor our allies, and we show no mercy to those who prey on the innocent. The Korthak wanted a war. They're about to get one." The human repair teams were already working on their ship, moving with an efficiency that spoke of long experience. The medical teams that boarded were professional and competent, treating the Valerian wounded with the same care they would show their own people. But underneath their helpful exterior, Zethkar could see something that made his blood run cold. These beings moved like hunters, their eyes constantly scanning for threats, their bodies coiled with barely contained violence. They were beings who had evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill them, and they had not only survived but thrived. "Admiral," he said quietly, "we are grateful for your assistance. But I must warn you, the Galactic Council will not approve of human intervention in this sector." Chen's expression became thoughtful. "The Galactic Council has been aware of the Korthak expansion for months. They've held committee meetings, filed formal protests, and issued strongly worded statements. Meanwhile, entire civilizations have been wiped out." She leaned forward slightly, and Zethkar could see the fire burning in her eyes. "Humans don't hold committee meetings when civilians are being murdered. We act." The repairs to the luminous dawn were completed with remarkable speed. The human engineers had not only fixed the damage from the Korthak attack, but had actually improved several of their systems. When Zethkar questioned this, the chief engineer, a grizzled human named Martinez, simply shrugged. "Old habit," he said. "We see something that could work better, we fix it. Life's too short to leave things half done." As the human ships prepared to depart, Admiral Chen opened one final communication channel. "Commander Zethkar," she said, "when you report this incident to your superiors, I want you to include a message for the Galactic Council." "Of course, Admiral. What would you like me to tell them?" Chen's smile was sharp enough to cut metal. "Tell them that the age of committee meetings and strongly worded statements is over. Tell them that humanity has arrived and we're here to clean house." The human fleet began to move, their ships forming up with military precision. The massive dreadnought Retribution led the formation, its weapons already charging for the battles to come. As Zethkar watched them disappear into hyperspace, heading toward Korthak territory with deadly purpose, he realized that the galaxy was about to change forever. The beings they had called for help were not just another spacefaring species. They were something far more dangerous. They were Deathworlders, and they were going to war. 3 days after the encounter with the human fleet, the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 47 different species had gathered for an emergency session, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and harmonic tones that the universal translators struggled to process. Ambassador Veltar of the Valerian delegation stood at the central podium, his 4 arms trembling slightly as he prepared to deliver Commander Zethkar's report. The weight of what he was about to reveal pressed down on him like the gravity of a gas giant. "Honored delegates," he began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. 3 standard days ago, one of our research vessels encountered what can only be described as a paradigm shift in galactic politics. High Chancellor Marixtai, a towering crystalline being who served as the Council's current leader, gestured for him to continue. "Please elaborate, Ambassador Veltar. Your preliminary reports mentioned human involvement in a military action." "The humans didn't just get involved," Veltar said, his mandibles clicking nervously. "They obliterated an entire Korthak war fleet in under 20 minutes. A dreadnought was destroyed with a single shot." A wave of shocked silence swept through the chamber. The Korthak Dominion had been a growing concern for months, but their military capabilities were well documented. Their dreadnoughts were some of the most heavily armed and armored vessels in known space. Counselor Jex Andra of the Aquatic Federation raised a tentacle. "With respect, Ambassador, that seems highly improbable. The Korthak vessels are equipped with quantum shields and reinforced neutronium hulls. Even our most advanced weapons require sustained bombardment to penetrate their defenses." "I have the sensor recordings," Veltar replied, activating the holographic display system. "I wish I could say they were corrupted or falsified, but our science teams have verified their authenticity." The hologram showed the space battle in devastating detail. The Council delegates watched in stunned silence as the human ships moved through space with impossible grace, their weapons cutting through Korthak defenses like they were made of tissue paper. The destruction of the lead dreadnought drew gasps of disbelief from several species. "By the eternal currents," whispered Counselor Thelmos of the Ethereal Collective. "What kind of weapons are those?" "Our scientists can't even classify them," Veltar admitted. "The energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. The humans appear to have developed technology that operates on principles we don't understand." High Chancellor Marixtai's crystalline form pulsed with concerned light patterns. "What was the human commander's stated intention?" Veltar hesitated before answering. "Admiral Chen informed my commander that humanity intends to liberate every world conquered by the Korthak Dominion. All of them." The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from a dozen species began speaking at once, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony that overwhelmed the translation systems. It took several minutes for order to be restored. "This is madness," declared Senator Yixahal of the Merchant Consortium. "The Korthak Dominion spans 17 systems. They have a standing military of over 3 million soldiers and 600 combat vessels. No single species could possibly—" "The Terrans have done this before," interrupted Veltar quietly, and the chamber fell silent again. Admiral Chen mentioned previous conflicts with something called the Vegan Empire and the Centauri hegemony. Our historical archives show both of those powers simply disappeared approximately 60 years ago. A cold chill seemed to settle over the assembly. Several delegates began frantically accessing their personal data networks, pulling up archived information that they had previously dismissed as unreliable. "The Centauri records," murmured Counselor Jexandra, her tentacles writhing in agitation. "We always assumed they were destroyed by internal rebellion or natural disaster. But the timeline matches. As do the Vegan territorial markers," added Counselor Thelmos. "Their entire region of space was declared a navigation hazard with no explanation given." High Chancellor Mrixthai's light patterns shifted to deep amber, indicating serious concern. Are we to understand that humanity has previously eliminated two major interstellar powers without the galaxy at large being aware of their involvement? It appears so, Veltar confirmed. And now they're preparing to do the same to the Korthak Dominion. Meanwhile, in the Korthak home system of Destructi, War Master Gorthaz paced the command deck of his flagship with growing fury. The loss of the raiding fleet should have been impossible. No species in this region of space possessed weapons capable of threatening Korthak's superiority. "Show me the combat recordings again," he snarled to his communications officer. The holographic display activated, showing the brief but devastating battle. Gorthaz watched his ships being systematically destroyed by an enemy that moved like nothing he had ever seen. The precision, the speed, the overwhelming firepower, it defied everything he thought he knew about warfare. "Have our intelligence services identified these humans?" he asked. Intelligence Director Vashatek consulted her data tablets. "Very little information available, War Master. They appear to originate from a planet called Earth, located in what the locals call the Sol system. Our databases classify their world as a Class 12 death world." Gorthaz's blood-red eyes narrowed. "Explain." "Hostile gravity, toxic atmosphere composition, extreme weather patterns, and an ecosystem dominated by predatory species. According to our classification system, no intelligent life should be able to evolve there." "Yet they did," Gorthaz observed grimly, "and they developed space travel despite their hostile environment. What else do we know?" "Fragmentary reports suggest they've been active in deep space for approximately 100 years. There are unconfirmed accounts of military actions against other powers, but details are scarce." The War Master studied the tactical display showing the positions of his remaining fleets. The Korthak Dominion controlled 17 star systems with a combined population of 12 billion subjugated beings. Their military doctrine had always relied on overwhelming force and the fear it generated. "Dispatch reconnaissance squadrons to the border systems," he commanded. "I want to know everything about these humans, their capabilities, their weaknesses, their fleet compositions, and increase patrols in all occupied territories." "War Master," Vashtek said hesitantly, "perhaps we should consider diplomatic contact. The humans may be willing to negotiate." Gorthaz turned on her with fury blazing in his eyes. "The Korthak do not negotiate with inferior species. We conquer, we rule, we dominate. These humans will learn their place or they will be destroyed." 3 light years away. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the Retribution, watching the final preparations for Operation Hammer Fall. The human battle fleet had grown significantly since their encounter with the Valerian research vessel. 7 dreadnoughts, 23 heavy cruisers, 41 destroyers, and countless support vessels formed the largest military formation humanity had assembled in over 2 decades. "Admiral," reported Captain Williams from the bridge, "all task forces are reporting ready status. Intelligence has confirmed Korthak fleet positions in 3 target systems." Chen nodded, her expression grim but determined. The investigation into the attack on Research Station Omega had revealed the full scope of Korthak brutality. Men, women, and children had been tortured for information before being executed. The scientists had been working on agricultural improvements for struggling colonies. Their research could have fed millions of people. "What's the civilian situation in the target systems?" she asked. Estimates suggest approximately 40 million enslaved beings across the 3 worlds, mixed species, mostly Zephyrians and Altarians, captured during the initial Korthak expansion. Chen's jaw tightened. The reports from liberated prisoners in previous conflicts painted a clear picture of Korthak slave management, brutal working conditions, inadequate food and medical care, and systematic elimination of anyone who showed signs of resistance. "Admiral," Commander Rodriguez said as he joined her at the observation window, The Galactic Council has issued a formal request for us to stand down. They're calling for diplomatic negotiations. After how many months of committee meetings while civilians died? Chen asked coldly. Tell the Council we'll be happy to discuss the situation after we've completed our humanitarian mission. The truth was that humanity had been watching the Korthak expansion with growing alarm for over a year. The Galactic Council's response had been predictably bureaucratic, endless debates, subcommittees, and formal protests that the Korthak simply ignored. Meanwhile, intelligence reports showed systematic genocide on conquered worlds. Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from the Korthak leadership, the communications officer reported. Audio only, encrypted on multiple frequencies. Put it through, Chen ordered. The voice that emerged from the speakers was harsh and guttural, filled with the arrogance of a species accustomed to dominating others. I am War Master Gorthaz of the Korthak Dominion. You have committed an act of war against the rightful rulers of this sector. Withdraw your forces immediately or face the full might of our military. Chen smiled coldly. This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Colonial Defense Force. You attacked and murdered human civilians. That was your first mistake. Threatening us was your second. You speak boldly for the representative of such a small species, Gorthaz replied with obvious disdain. We have conquered civilizations far more advanced than yours. Your pathetic fleet will be destroyed, and your worlds will burn. War Master, Chen said, her voice carrying the chill of absolute zero. You're about to learn why most intelligent species avoid Deathworlders. The transmission cut off, and Chen turned to address her command staff. All task forces execute hammer fall. Rules of engagement are simple. Any Korthak military vessel is a legitimate target. Priority protection for civilian populations and infrastructure. We're not here to conquer territory. We're here to liberate people. The human fleet began to move, disappearing into hyperspace jumps calculated to bring them into Korthak territory at 3 separate points simultaneously. The ships moved with deadly purpose, their crews trained in the harsh realities of warfare against species that showed no mercy to the innocent. Back on Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council continued their emergency session. But the tone had shifted from bureaucratic procedure to genuine fear. We need to understand what we're dealing with, High Chancellor Murixtai announced. Ambassador Veltar, your report mentioned that the human admiral referenced previous conflicts. Do we have any detailed information about these events? Veltar consulted his data tablets. I've managed to compile some information from various sources. The Vegan Empire was a militaristic power that controlled 9 systems about 60 years ago. They were known for slave trading and aggressive expansion. According to their last transmissions, they encountered a species they described as impossibly violent near their border worlds. What happened to them? Asked Counselor Jexandra. They simply stopped communicating. Investigation teams found their worlds empty except for automated beacons warning others to stay away. No signs of orbital bombardment, no evidence of ground combat. The population had simply vanished. A heavy silence settled over the chamber as the implications sank in. The Centauri hegemony showed a similar pattern, Veltar continued. They were a slaving empire that specialized in capturing and conditioning intelligent species for forced labor. Their final transmissions mentioned encountering apex predators from a nightmare world before all contact was lost. And now the humans are moving against the Korthak Dominion, observed Counselor Thelmos. The pattern is consistent. They target species that prey on civilians. High Chancellor Murixtai's crystalline form pulsed with deep purple light, indicating profound contemplation. Perhaps the question we should be asking is not whether we should try to stop them, but whether we should be grateful that someone finally is. The chamber fell quiet as delegates considered this perspective. The Korthak expansion had been a growing threat for months, and the Council's diplomatic approach had achieved nothing except giving the raiders more time to consolidate their conquests. "There will be consequences," Senator Yixhal warned. "If humanity succeeds in destroying the Korthak dominion, it will demonstrate that military action is more effective than diplomatic process. It could encourage other species to abandon peaceful negotiation." "And if they fail?" asked Counselor Jexandra. "What happens to our credibility then? We stood by and watched while supposedly inferior beings attempted what we claimed was impossible." As the debate continued, long-range sensors began detecting massive energy discharges from the direction of Korthak space. The readings were unlike anything in their databases, weapon signatures that defied conventional understanding of physics. The humans had arrived at their target systems, and the galaxy was about to witness the true capabilities of beings who had evolved on a world that actively tried to kill them every single day. War Master Gorthaz would soon discover that there was a significant difference between conquering civilized species and facing apex predators from a death world. The Korthak had spent centuries as the hunters. They were about to become the prey. The first indication that War Master Gorthaz had that something was catastrophically wrong came when the entire Destructi defense fleet simply disappeared from his sensors. One moment, 63 warships were maintaining patrol formations around the system's outer planets. The next moment, there was nothing but empty space and debris fields. "Report!" he bellowed at his sensor operator, who was frantically working at his console. "Unknown, War Master. The fleet was there then." They weren't. No distress signals, no energy discharges detected. They just vanished. Gorthaz studied the tactical display with growing unease. His military had conquered 17 star systems using proven tactics of overwhelming force and terror. No species had ever successfully resisted Korthak expansion once it began. Yet these humans seemed to operate by completely different rules. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving transmissions from Vexmoth and Chrysul systems. Both report their defense fleets have been eliminated." The War Master's blood ran cold. 3 simultaneous attacks on 3 different systems, each hundreds of light years apart. The coordination alone was impossible. No species possessed that kind of strategic capability. "How many ships did we lose?" he asked, though he dreaded the answer. "All of them, War Master. Combined fleet strength of 187 vessels. Total loss." Gorthaz stared at the display in disbelief. In less than an hour, humanity had eliminated nearly half of his military forces without suffering any detected losses of their own. It was inconceivable. "Open a channel to all remaining fleet commanders," he ordered. "Full recall to home system, maximum alert status." As the scattered remnants of his forces began converging on Destructi, Gorthaz tried to understand what he was facing. The humans fought unlike any enemy he had encountered. They struck without warning, eliminated their targets with surgical precision, then vanished before retaliation was possible. On the liberated world of Altair 7th, former slave colonies watched in amazement as human forces worked with impossible efficiency to restore basic services and provide medical care. The Korthak occupation had been brutal. 43% of the original population had died from overwork, malnutrition, or outright execution. Colonel Martinez supervised the relief operations from a temporary command post near the planet's largest refugee camp. The scenes of horror they had discovered upon arrival would haunt his dreams for years to come. Mass graves, torture chambers, entire cities reduced to slave labor camps. "Status report, Sergeant," he called to his aide. "Sir, medical teams have treated over 30,000 civilians so far. Major injuries, malnutrition, and psychological trauma are widespread. The Korthak systematically broke down social structures to prevent organized resistance." Martinez nodded grimly. It was a pattern they had seen before. Species like the Korthak didn't just conquer territory, they destroyed the will to resist by inflicting such trauma that survivors became compliant out of sheer terror. "What about the Korthak garrison?" he asked. "Surrendered without resistance once we eliminated their orbital support. Most of them seem confused that we haven't executed them immediately." That was another pattern. The Korthak expected enemies to match their brutality, to respond to atrocity with atrocity. They struggled to understand opponents who followed rules of engagement, who took prisoners instead of executing them, who showed mercy to the defeated. "Colonel," his communications officer reported, "Admiral Chen is requesting an update on civilian casualties. Tell the Admiral that preliminary numbers show approximately 400,000 survivors out of an original population of 700,000. Most are in poor health but responding well to treatment. The liberation of Altair 7th had taken exactly 6 hours from first contact to complete planetary control. The Korthak defenders had been so stunned by the speed and precision of the human assault that organized resistance had crumbled almost immediately. Dr. Sarah Kim, the chief medical officer for the relief operation, found herself treating injuries that defied her understanding of medical ethics. The Korthak had used torture not just for information extraction, but as a tool of population control. Systematic brutality designed to break the spirit of entire civilizations. "How can anyone be this deliberately cruel?" she asked Colonel Martinez during a brief break in the medical operations. "Because they're predators," he replied simply. "On Earth, we learned early that predators who prey on the weak will only stop when something stronger forces them to stop. The Galactic Council spent months trying to negotiate with creatures who view mercy as weakness." Dr. Kim nodded, returning to her patients. She had volunteered for this mission because she believed in humanity's responsibility to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. But seeing the scope of Korthak atrocities firsthand had hardened her resolve in ways she hadn't expected. Back on Daestruck High, War Master Gorthaz received reports that made his situation clear. The humans weren't just attacking military targets, they were systematically liberating every world in his empire. Slave populations were being freed, Korthak administrators captured, and entire planetary governments overthrown. "War Master," Intelligence Director Vashatek reported, "our remaining forces are requesting permission to retreat to our core worlds. Morale is collapsing. The troops have never faced an enemy like this." Gorthaz understood the problem. The Korthak military was built around intimidation and the expectation of easy victories against terrified opponents. They had never developed tactics for fighting an enemy that was faster, better equipped, and completely unafraid of them. "No retreat," he commanded. "Send word to all commanders, any ship that abandons its position will be destroyed by our own forces. We make our stand here." But even as he gave the order, Gorthaz knew he was facing an impossible situation. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that shouldn't exist. Their weapons cut through Korthak defenses like they were made of paper. Their ships moved with impossible speed and precision, and their tactics suggested a level of military experience that spoke of countless previous conflicts. On the flagship, Retribution, Admiral Chen reviewed the tactical reports with professional satisfaction. Operation Hammer Fall was proceeding exactly according to plan. 3 major Korthak systems had been liberated with minimal civilian casualties, and intelligence indicated that enemy morale was collapsing. "Admiral," Captain Williams reported, "long-range sensors detect the remaining Korthak fleet massing at their home system, approximately 90 vessels, including their command dreadnought." "Defensive posture?" Chen asked. "Tight formation around the primary world. They appear to be preparing for a siege." Chen studied the tactical display thoughtfully. The Korthak were reacting predictably, falling back to their stronghold and hoping their remaining numbers would be sufficient to repel attack. It was a strategy that might work against conventional enemies. Unfortunately for them, humans were anything but conventional. "Signal all task forces," she ordered. "Begin final approach to Deathworlders High. Inform the Korthak leadership that they have one opportunity to surrender unconditionally. If they refuse, we will take their system by force." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Deathworlders High system. Their ships spread across a formation that spanned millions of kilometers. To the Korthak sensors, it looked like a wall of death approaching their home world. War Master Gorthaz stood on his command bridge, watching the human fleet with grim determination. This was his last chance to prove that the Korthak Dominion could not be destroyed by a species from a single world. "Open a channel," he commanded. Admiral Chen's image appeared on his display, and once again he was struck by the predatory intensity in those forward-facing eyes. This was a being who had evolved from hunters, who saw conflict not as a last resort, but as a natural state of existence. "War Master Gorthaz," Chen said calmly, "you have one opportunity to surrender your forces unconditionally. Your empire is finished. Your fleets are destroyed. Your populations have been liberated. End this now. And your remaining personnel will be treated according to the established laws of war." Gorthaz drew himself up to his full height, every inch the warrior who had conquered dozens of worlds. "I am Gorthaz, War Master of the Korthak Dominion. We do not surrender to inferior species. Come and take our worlds if you can." Chen's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes grew colder. "As you wish, War Master. May your gods have mercy on you, because we won't." The transmission cut off, and the human fleet began to move forward. The Battle of Deathworlders High lasted exactly 47 minutes. The Korthak defenders, despite their desperate courage and knowledge that defeat meant the end of their empire, found themselves facing an enemy that operated beyond their understanding of warfare. Human ships moved through their formations like ghosts, appearing from nowhere to deliver devastating attacks before vanishing again. Their weapons seemed to ignore shields and armor, cutting through the mightiest dreadnoughts with surgical precision. And their tactics spoke of a species that had turned warfare into an art form. When the shooting stopped, the entire Korthak fleet had been destroyed or captured. War Master Gorthaz's flagship had been disabled rather than destroyed, its crew taken prisoner in accordance with human military doctrine. Admiral Chen personally accepted Gorthaz's surrender in the ruins of his command bridge. The War Master, wounded but alive, stared at her with a mixture of hatred and confused respect. "You fought well," she told him. "Your people showed courage, even in defeat." "That counts for something." Gorthaz struggled to understand. "You could have killed us all. Why didn't you?" Chen's expression softened slightly. "Because we're not you, War Master. We don't wage war for conquest or glory. We fight to protect the innocent and stop those who prey on them. Your empire is finished, but your people don't have to die." The aftermath of the Korthak War sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. In less than a week, humanity had eliminated an empire that had terrorized an entire sector for over 2 years. 17 star systems had been liberated, 40 million enslaved beings freed, and a military force of over 300 ships completely destroyed. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session to address the new reality they faced. Ambassador Veltar stood before the assembly once again, but this time his report carried a very different tone. "Honored delegates," he began, "I have been authorized by my government to present humanity's formal statement regarding their recent military actions." High Chancellor Myrixthai gestured for him to continue, his crystalline form pulsing with anxious light patterns. "Humanity regrets that unilateral action was necessary, but they could not stand by while civilian populations suffered under Korthak brutality. They have requested permission to establish a permanent peacekeeping presence in the liberated systems until local governments can be restored." The chamber erupted in debate. Some delegates argued that humanity had violated every principle of galactic law. Others pointed out that they had accomplished in 1 week what the Council had failed to do in months. "What are humanity's terms?" asked Councillor Jexandra. "They have no terms," Veltar replied. "The liberated systems will be returned to their original populations. Korthak prisoners will be tried for war crimes by an international tribunal. Humanity seeks no territorial gains or reparations." Senator Yixhal of the Merchant Consortium stood up angrily. "This sets a dangerous precedent. If every species decides to take unilateral military action against slave-trading genocidal empires," Veltar interrupted, "perhaps that wouldn't be such a bad thing." High Chancellor Marixthai called for order, then addressed the Assembly with grave formality. "The Council must acknowledge a new reality. Humanity has demonstrated capabilities that exceed our understanding. They have also demonstrated a commitment to protecting civilian populations that puts our own efforts to shame." He paused, his crystalline form shifting to a deep blue that indicated profound decision. "I propose that we formally request humanity's assistance in establishing a peacekeeping force to address future threats to galactic security. It appears that sometimes the protection of civilization requires the intervention of those who understand the nature of true predators." The vote was closer than expected, but it passed. For the first time in galactic history, a species from a single world had been formally invited to serve as peacekeepers for an entire sector. Admiral Chen received the news while overseeing the restoration of the last Korthak slave world. Around her, former prisoners were rebuilding their lives with the assistance of human engineers and medical teams. "What's our response?" Captain Williams asked. Chen watched a group of Zephyrian children playing in what had once been a forced labor camp. They were laughing, a sound that had been forbidden under Korthak rule. "Tell the Council we accept," she said. "Someone has to watch over the innocent. It might as well be those who understand the cost of freedom." 3 months later, Commander Zethkar of the Valerian research vessel, Luminous Dawn, received new orders for a deep space survey mission. As his ship prepared to depart, he reflected on the changes that had swept through the galaxy since that fateful distress call. The Korthak Dominion was gone. Its former territories now a patchwork of restored governments protected by human peacekeeping forces. War Master Gorthaz and his surviving officers were serving life sentences for crimes against sentient beings, and the galaxy had learned a valuable lesson about the difference between bureaucratic process and decisive action. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a standard greeting from the human patrol ship Guardian. They're providing escort through the outer system." Zethkar smiled, remembering his terror when he had first encountered humanity. Now their ships represented safety and protection for civilians throughout the sector. "Signal our thanks," he ordered, "and remind them that we still owe them a debt for our rescue." The reply came back immediately, carrying the characteristic dry humor that Zethkar had learned to associate with human communications. "No debt required, Commander. Just doing our job. Safe travels." As the Luminous Dawn departed for deep space, Zethkar reflected on an important truth he had learned. Sometimes the greatest predators make the best protectors because they understand exactly what they're protecting against. The galaxy was a safer place because humanity had answered their distress call, even if they hadn't known what they were calling for at the time.